There's a moment, maybe you've felt it, when everything inside you starts to tighten. Your chest feels heavy, your thoughts begin to race. And before you even realize what's happening, you're no longer in control. Something else is. Anger, fear, doubt, insecurity, it takes over your voice, your actions, your decisions. And later, when it's all quiet again, you look back and think, why did I react like that? That moment, that loss of control, that's what we're here to talk about. Because the truth is, most people don't fail because they lack talent. They don't fall behind because they don't have opportunities. They fall behind because they never learned how to master what's happening inside them. We live in a world that teaches us how to respond to everything outside, how to build, how to compete, how to win. But no one really teaches us how to deal with the storms within. No one sits us down and says, here's how you handle fear when it shows up uninvited. Here's how you respond when doubt starts whispering in your ear. So what happens? We grow up reacting to criticism, reacting to rejection, reacting to pressure, reacting to people who don't understand us. And every time we react without awareness, we give away a piece of our control. And here's the hard truth. If you don't control your emotions will control you. Not sometimes, not occasionally, always. But let me be clear about something. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean becoming emotionless. It doesn't mean suppressing how you feel or pretending everything is fine when it's not. That's not strength. That's avoidance. Real strength is feeling everything and still choosing your response. Think about that. Anyone can stay calm when things are easy. Anyone can be positive when everything is going their way. But what about when things fall apart? What about when someone disrespects you? When you fail? When you feel like you're not enough? That's the moment that defines you. Not the feeling itself, but what you do with it. Because emotions are powerful. They're fast. They're automatic. They don't ask for permission. Fear doesn't knock on the door and wait for you to be ready. It just walks in. Anger doesn't send a warning message. It just shows up. But here's what most people don't realize. Just because an emotion shows up doesn't mean it gets to take control. You can feel anger without becoming anger. You can feel fear without obeying fear. You can feel doubt without believing doubt. And that is where mastery begins. It begins in the space between what you feel and what you choose. There's always a space, even if it's small, even if it's just a second. In that space, you have power. The power to pause. The power to breathe. The power to decide, I'm not going to let this emotion decide who I am right now. But most people never use that space. They go straight from feeling to reacting. No pause. No awareness, just impulse, and impulse is dangerous. Impulse ruins relationships, it destroys opportunities, it creates regret, because when you act from impulse, you're not acting from your values, you're acting from your emotions, and emotions in the moment are not always honest. They're loud, they're convincing. But they're not always telling you the truth. Fear will tell you you're not ready, even when you are. Doubt will tell you you're not capable, even when you've proven you are. Anger will tell you to say things that you can never take back. So if you trust every emotion you feel without questioning it, you will be missiled. That's why emotional mastery is not about control in the sense of stopping emotions. It's about understanding them. It's about recognizing them for what they are. Signals, not commands. Your emotions are trying to tell you something. Fear might be telling you that you're stepping into something unfamiliar. Doubt might be telling you that you care deeply about the outcome. Anger might be telling you that a boundary has been crossed. But here's the key. They are messages, not instructions. You get to decide what to do with them. And the moment you realize that, everything changes. Because now, instead of being controlled by what you feel, you become curious about it. Instead of reacting, you start observing. Why do I feel this way? What is this emotion trying to tell me? Is this helping me or holding me back? That shift from reaction to awareness is where real power lies. But let's be honest, it's not easy. Because in the heat of the moment, emotions feel real. They feel urgent. They demand action, and slowing down feels unnatural. But that's exactly why it matters. Because the people who win in life are not the ones who never feel negative emotions. They're the ones who don't let those emotions dictate their behavior. They feel the same fear, the same doubt, the same frustration, but they've trained themselves to pause, to breathe, to think before they act. And that training doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small moments, in the moment when someone criticizes you, and instead of reacting defensively, you listen. In the moment when you feel like quitting, and instead of giving in, you take one more step. In the moment when anger rises, and instead of exploding, you choose silence. Those moments may seem small, but they're not. They're building something. They're building discipline. They're building awareness. They're building control. And over time, those small moments turn into a new identity. An identity of someone who is not easily shaken. Someone who doesn't break under pressure. Someone who stays grounded no matter what's happening around them. And let me tell you something, that kind of person stands out. In a world where everyone reacts, the one who responds with calm becomes powerful. In a world full of noise, the one who stays centered becomes clear. In a world driven by impulse, the one who chooses discipline becomes unstoppable. But here's where most people get stuck. They wait until they feel better before they act better. They say, once I stop feeling anxious, then I'll be confident. Once I stop feeling doubt, then I'll take action. Once I feel motivated, then I'll move forward. But that's not how it works. You don't act based on how you feel. You act based on who you choose to be. Because if you wait for your emotions to align before you take action, you will wait forever. Confidence doesn't come before action, it comes after. Clarity doesn't come before movement, it comes through movement. And control doesn't come from avoiding emotions. It comes from facing and choosing your response anyway. So the question is not, how do I stop feeling negative emotions? The real question is, who am I going to be when those emotions show up? Are you going to be the person who reacts or the person who responds? Are you going to be the person who gives in or the person who stands firm? Are you going to be the person who lets emotions control you or the one who leads them? Because you can't always control what you feel, but you can always control what you do next. And that is your power. But it requires responsibility. It requires you to stop blaming your emotions for your actions. It requires you to stop saying, I did this because I was angry, or I couldn't do that because I was afraid. No, you felt angry and you chose to act in a certain way. You felt fear and you chose to hold back. That distinction matters. Because the moment you take responsibility for your response, you take back control. And control is not something you find, it's something you build. You build it through awareness. You build it through practice. You build it through choosing, again and again, to not let temporary emotions create permanent consequences. Because that's what happens when emotions take over. A moment of anger can destroy years of trust. A moment of fear can cost you life-changing opportunities. A moment of doubt can keep you stuck for years. All because you didn't pause. All because you didn't choose. So what if starting today you did something different? What if the next time you feel that rush of emotion you don't react immediately? What if you pause? What if you take a breath? What if you remind yourself, this is just a feeling. It's not who I am. And what if, instead of letting that emotion control your behavior, you decide to act in alignment with your values? That's mastery. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's quiet. It's internal. It's a decision that no one else sees, but it changes everything. Because over time, those decisions shape your life. They shape your relationships. They shape your success. They shape the kind of person you become. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to be perfect. You're going to mess up. You're going to react sometimes. You're going to let emotions take over. That's part of being human. But every time you become aware of it, every time you catch yourself, every time you choose differently, you get stronger. You get better. You get closer to mastery. So don't aim for perfection. Aim for awareness. Aim for progress. Aim for becoming just a little more in control than you were yesterday. Because that's how it happens. Not in one big moment, but in 1,000 small ones. And one day you'll find yourself in a situation that used to trigger you. The same pressure, the same challenge, the same emotion. But this time, something is different. You don't react. You don't lose control. You pause. You breathe. You choose. And in that moment, you realize something powerful. The emotion is still there, but it no longer owns you. And that is freedom. And that realization changes the way you approach everything, because you begin to understand that fighting your emotions is not the answer. Trying to suppress them, trying to overpower them, trying to pretend they don't exist, that only makes them stronger. The more you try to push them down, the more they build pressure inside you. And eventually they come back louder, heavier, and harder to control. You don't rise above emotions by force. You outgrow them by becoming mentally stronger than them. That means you stop seeing emotions as enemies that need to be defeated, and you start seeing them as weights that need to be lifted. Just like in a gym, the weight doesn't get lighter, you get stronger. The resistance doesn't disappear, your ability to handle it improves. And that shift in perspective is everything. Because now, instead of asking, how do I get rid of this feeling? You start asking, how do I become stronger than this feeling? That question puts you back in control. Because emotions don't grow stronger on their own. They grow stronger when you stay the same. They dominate when you don't evolve. They take over when your mindset, your discipline, your awareness remain weak. Think about fear for a moment. Fear doesn't shrink because you tell it to go away. It doesn't disappear because you wish it gone. It stays exactly the same, but your relationship with it can change. When your mindset is weak, fear feels like a wall. It stops you. It controls you. It convinces you that you can't move forward. But when your mindset becomes stronger, that same fear becomes a signal. It becomes a challenge. It becomes something you walk through instead of something that blocks your path. The fear didn't change, you did. And that's the game. It's never about eliminating the emotion. It's about elevating yourself beyond its control. The same applies to anger. When you lack emotional strength, anger owns you. It dictates your words. It controls your tone. It pushes you to react in ways that you later regret. It makes you feel powerful in the moment, but weak in the aftermath. But when you grow stronger mentally, anger loses its grip. It still shows up, but it no longer decides your behavior. You feel it, you recognize it, but you don't become it. You don't let it hijack your identity. Because you've built something stronger inside you. Clarity, discipline, self-awareness. And those things act like anchors. They keep you grounded when emotions try to pull you away. But here's where most people misunderstand growth. They think becoming stronger means becoming tougher on the outside, acting cold, acting detached, acting like nothing affects them. That's not strength, that's armor. And armor doesn't make you stronger. It just hides your weakness. Real strength is being fully aware of what you feel and still choosing how you act. Real strength is being honest with yourself when you're hurt, when you're insecure, when you're overwhelmed, and not letting those feelings turn into destructive actions. Because anyone can pretend, anyone can hide, anyone can build a mask, but it takes real discipline to face your emotions without letting them control you. It takes real courage to say, I feel this, but I won't let it define my next move. And that kind of strength is built, not given. It's built in moments when you feel like reacting, but you pause. It's built in moments when your mind is telling you to quit, but you continue. It's built in moments when you feel overwhelmed, but you stay present. Those moments are uncomfortable. They test you. They push you beyond what feels natural. But that's exactly why they matter. Because every time you choose discipline over impulse, you're strengthening your mind. Every time you choose awareness over reaction, you're expanding your control. Every time you choose growth over comfort, you're outgrowing the emotional patterns that used to limit you. And over time, something powerful starts to happen. The things that once triggered you don't hit the same way anymore. The situations that once overwhelmed you feel manageable. The emotions that once controlled you start to lose their intensity. Not because they've disappeared, but because you've evolved. You've become someone who can handle more. And that's the goal. Not to live a life without negative emotions, but to become someone who is not shaken by them. Because life will always test you. There will always be pressure. There will always be uncertainty. There will always be moments that challenge your patience, your confidence, your stability. And if your strategy is to avoid those moments, you will never grow. But if your strategy is to build yourself into someone who can face those moments with control, with clarity, with strength, then nothing can break you. Because your power doesn't come from the absence of difficulty, it comes from your ability to handle it. But here's the truth that most people don't want to accept. Growth is uncomfortable. Outgrowing your emotions means confronting them. It means sitting with them. It means not running away when things get difficult. And that's hard, because your natural instinct is to escape discomfort, to distract yourself, to avoid anything that makes you feel uneasy. But avoidance keeps you stuck. Avoidance keeps you weak. Because every time you avoid an emotion, you reinforce its control over you. You teach your mind that this feeling is too much to handle. You give it power. But every time you face it, every time you sit with it, every time you move forward despite it, you weaken its grip. You prove to yourself that you are stronger than what you feel. And that proof builds confidence. Not the kind of confidence that comes from external validation, but the kind that comes from within. The kind that says, I've been here before. I know this feeling, and I know I can handle it. That's real confidence. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's quiet. It's grounded. It's unshakable. And it comes from experience. From repeatedly choosing to face what's uncomfortable instead of avoiding it. From repeatedly choosing growth over ease. From repeatedly choosing to become stronger instead of wishing things were easier. Because things don't get easier. You get stronger, and that strength changes everything. It changes how you respond to pressure. It changes how you handle setbacks. It changes how you deal with people who doubt you, criticize you, misunderstand you. Because when you're mentally strong, you don't need to react to everything. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to defend your worth. You know who you are. And that internal certainty makes external noise irrelevant. But that level of strength doesn't come from one decision. It comes from consistent practice, from daily effort, from small choices that most people overlook. Choosing to stay calm when it's easier to react. Choosing to stay focused when it's easier to get distracted. Choosing to stay disciplined when it's easier to give in. Those choices might seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound. They build momentum. They create a version of you that is more stable, more controlled, more resilient. And over time, that version becomes your default. You no longer have to force yourself to stay calm. You naturally respond with calm. You no longer have to fight to stay disciplined. You naturally act with discipline. because you've trained your mind. You've conditioned yourself. You've become stronger. And once you reach that point, emotions lose their power to control you. They still exist. They still show up. But they no longer dictate your behavior. They no longer define your identity. They no longer decide your future because you've outgrown them. And outgrowing them doesn't mean they disappear. It means they no longer have authority over you. It means you've built something greater within yourself, a level of awareness that sees emotions for what they are, a level of discipline that chooses action over impulse, a level of strength that remains steady no matter what you feel. And that's what separates those who are controlled by their emotions from those who lead themselves. It's not talent. It's not intelligence. It's not luck. It's the ability to master what's happening inside, to build a mind that doesn't crumble under pressure, to build a mindset that doesn't depend on how you feel, to build a version of yourself that is stronger than any temporary emotion, because emotions are temporary. They come and go. They rise and fall. But the person you become, that stays. So the question is not, how do I feel right now? The question is, who am I becoming through this? Are you becoming someone who reacts or someone who responds? Are you becoming someone who avoids or someone who faces? Are you becoming someone who is controlled or someone who is in control? Because every moment, every challenge, every emotion is shaping you. It's either strengthening you or weakening you. And that depends on how you respond. Not once, not occasionally, but consistently. Because consistency is what builds strength. Consistency is what creates change. Consistency is what allows you to outgrow the patterns that once held you back. And those patterns, they don't disappear overnight. They've been built over years. Through habits, through experiences, through repeated reactions. So breaking them requires patience. It requires persistence. It requires a commitment to growth even when progress feels slow. But every step forward matters. Every moment of awareness matters. Every decision to respond instead of react matters. Because those moments are shaping your future. They're building the person you're becoming. And that person is either someone who is controlled by emotions or someone who has mastered them. There is no middle ground. Because if you're not actively building control, you're passively giving it away. And the world will test that. People will test that. Situations will test that. And if you haven't built that internal strength, you will be shaken. You will be pulled in different directions. You will be controlled by what you feel in the moment. But if you've done the work, if you've built that discipline, if you've strengthened your mind, then no matter what happens externally, you remain steady internally. And that stability, that control, that strength becomes your advantage. It becomes the foundation of everything you do. It becomes the reason you can move forward, even when things are difficult. It becomes the reason you can stay focused, even when things are chaotic. It becomes the reason you can succeed, not just occasionally, but consistently. Because you're no longer at the mercy of your emotions. You're no longer dependent on how you feel. You've built something stronger, something deeper, something that doesn't fluctuate with every challenge. And that is what allows you to rise, not by force, not by suppression, but by growth. By becoming someone who is mentally stronger than anything that tries to control you. By becoming someone who doesn't break under pressure, but becomes stronger because of it. By becoming someone who doesn't run from emotions, but rises above them through discipline, awareness, and consistent growth.